Hey everyone, welcome to Slide Med. Today we are going to be discussing about the red blood cell, and this video will be the first of two videos we're going to be treating about the red blood cell. Today we're going to introduce the red blood cell. We're going to discuss about the shape and size of red blood cells. We're going to look at the concentration of red blood cells in blood, the function of red blood cells, and production of red blood cells. As we all know, blood is essential to life, and blood circulates through our body and delivers essential substances like oxygen and nutrients to the body cells. It also transports metabolic waste products away from those cells. So there are four cells or four components that comprise the human blood. Okay, the major cells actually are the red blood cells, white blood cells, and the platelets. Then we also have the plasma, which is a composition of water, ions, proteins, nutrients, waste, gases. That's what make up the plasma. But the cells, which are the red blood cells, white blood cells, platelets, are the major three component cells we can find in the blood. Now let's look at the shape and size of red blood cells. Red blood cells, as we all know, are also called erythrocytes. Okay, they are biconcave disc, and it has a mean diameter of about 7.8 micrometers and a thickness of 2.5 micrometers at the thickest point. It has a thick point as the surrounding cell, and 1 micrometer or less in the center. That's the less dense area at the center. It also has an average volume of 90 to 95 cubic micrometers. 90 to 95 cubic micrometers. As many of us that are preparing for exams, it's very important that we note these figures. It's very important. The shapes of red blood cells can change remarkably as the cells squeeze through capillaries. The red blood cell is like a bag that can be deformed to almost any shape. Because of this, deformation does not rupture the cell, as would be with many other cells. So we see that the red blood cells has a unique ability to squeeze, through capillaries, and as such, it doesn't become ruptured easily like other cells. So that's a very important characteristic of the red blood cell. As you can see, okay, we have discussed about this. As you can see the surrounding is more thicker than the center. So that's the thickness. The surrounding has a thickness of 2.5, while the inner one has about 1. Okay, so that's what we should note about the red blood cell structure. Let's also look at the concentration of red blood cells in blood. It's very important we also note these figures. In healthy men, the average number of red blood cells per cubic millimeter is 5.2 million. 5.2 million plus or minus 300,000. In women, it is about 4.7 million plus or minus 300,000. Now, we also know that persons living at higher altitudes have greater number of red blood cells. When you're talking about hypoxia, and we are going to be treating it in subsequent videos, so let's not bother ourselves so much on that for now. But let's know that people living at high altitudes have greater number of red blood cells. Now let's look at the function of red blood cell. A major function of red blood cell is to transport hemoglobin, which in turn carries oxygen from the lungs to the tissues. Now let's know that hemoglobin must remain inside red blood cells to effectively perform its functions in humans. In some lower animals, it can come out of the red blood cell and to still perform its function, but in humans, the hemoglobin must still remain in the red blood cell to perform its function. And apart from the transport of hemoglobin, which carries oxygen from the lungs to the tissues, the red blood cell also has another peculiar function, in that they contain a large quantity of an enzyme, carbonic anhydrase. Okay, and this enzyme catalyzes the reversible reaction between carbon dioxide and water to form carbonic acid. Okay, to form carbonic acid. The rapidity of this reaction makes it possible for the water of the blood to transport enormous quantities of carbon dioxide in the form of bicarbonate ion from the tissues to the lungs, where it is reconverted to carbon dioxide and expelled into the atmosphere as a body waste product. So that's another very important function of red blood cells. The hemoglobin in red blood cells is an excellent acid-base buffer. It is responsible for most of the buffering power of the whole blood. Okay, the hemoglobin in red blood cells, they act as an excellent acid-base buffer. Okay, they are responsible for most of the buffering power of the blood. Okay, we can see the equation here. Carbonic anhydrase catalyzing the reaction of carbon dioxide and water to form carbonic acid. And also the rapidity of the reaction also causes a dissociation to liberate bicarbonate and hydrogen ion. Okay, carbon dioxide is being transported via this bicarbonate. Okay, carbon dioxide is transported via this bicarbonate from the tissues to the lungs. Okay, where it is now reconverted to carbon dioxide and expelled into the atmosphere as a body waste product. So this equation is very, very important. Now let's look at how red blood cells are produced, production of red blood cells. And under this, we're going to be discussing on two topics. Number one, we're going to look at the areas of the body that produce red blood cells in life, in stages. We're also going to look at the genesis of blood cells as they want to know. Before we delve into the production of red blood cells, let's look at how does blood cell come into play? Like, where do they come from? So that's a very, very important thing we must note before we look into other places like erythropoiesis. That will be our next video. But let's look at the genesis of blood cells as a whole. I think it's very important for us to understand that before we go into erythropoiesis proper. Okay. Now we see that the yolk sac produce red blood cells, but they do that in the early weeks of embryonic life. Okay, the yolk sac produce red blood cells. That's primitive red blood cells in the early weeks of embryonic life. Then the liver also produce red blood cells during the middle trimester of gestation. Okay, but we should also note that during this period also little amounts are also produced by the spleen and the lymph nodes, but it is primarily by the liver. Then the bone marrow also produces red blood cell. That's during the last month of gestation and after birth. Okay, so the bone marrow continues to produce red blood cells to the age of 25. To the age of 25, then the long bones take over. The bone marrow of long bones continue from that age, and just like that. Okay, so the red blood cells are produced in these three primary areas till birth. Okay, yolk sac in the early week of embryonic life, liver during the middle trimester of gestation, and the bone marrow during the last month of gestation and after birth. Now we're going to look at the second heading under that place, genesis of red blood cells. All blood cells, including red blood cells, begin their lives in the bone marrow from a single type of cell called pluripotent hematopoietic stem cell. Pluripotent hematopoietic stem cell. And these cells differentiate to form committed stem cells for each blood type. So each blood cell type have its own committed stem cell, but they all emanate from pluripotent hematopoietic stem cells. As these cells reproduce, a small portion of them remains and are retained in the bone marrow to maintain a steady supply. Of course, the body cannot use up the whole stem cells. Of course, some will still remain and be retained in the bone marrow to maintain a steady supply of new red blood cells, new white blood cells, new platelets. Okay, the different committed stem cells, when grown in culture, will produce colonies of specific type of blood cells. Colonies of specific type of blood cells. Now, the one that is peculiar to erythrocytes, which is red blood cell, the committed stem cell that produces erythrocyte is called colony forming unit erythrocyte. Colony forming unit erythrocyte. We also have colony forming unit megakaryocyte. We also have colony forming unit granulocyte, monocyte. Those ones are for other cells, okay? But the one for red blood cells is colony forming unit erythrocyte. So in the next video, we're going to delve into erythropoiesis proper. We're going to look at the stages, from pro-erythroblasts and all that. And so we're going to discuss deeply into erythropoiesis.